So I'm thinking that, at that point, they just drafted themselves into a corner. We said that at the start of the game, and that corner, they could have done well with that corner if they actually were able to build off of that, but they just didn't get their feet off the ground, and then it just was fairly one-sided and not very exciting in the end.
All right. Well, we do have a replay here ready for us. I mean, we can find a couple, I'm sure, in that game, mostly in favor of VP. And as we take a look, so Hot 6, and this has kind of been the theme for a lot of teams, as we've discussed earlier, is just these teams, they focus maybe too much on the fights, and all right, we're going to focus on the kills. Sure, they rounded it out with the Pugna this time around, but it didn't really work out too well for them. Just, it's this, we always say, all right, maybe it's not, the drafts are all right. That's been the theme we've had so far, but in Hot 6's case, do they need to change the draft a little bit? Because we've seen this repeated.
Yeah, it's a very similar situation with the EG. They come up with this last pick, which has to be a spellcaster for their solo mid player, which in a sense doesn't really... I mean, it's so difficult when you have to play around like this player can only... I'm not sure if they only want to put him on spellcasting mid heroes or he just plays spellcasting. It's a huge hindrance towards the drafter, I feel. A lot of limitations, and it's just basically most of the time you try to avoid stuff like this in a team. You don't want limitations on, I can only play this hero, or I only want to play this sort of hero. It's generally a negative thing for a team.
Yeah, well, we have the final moments of that game too, as we see VP pushing in and just taking the game for themselves against MVP Hot 6. Syndrome, do you think, so we just talked about the draft and whatnot, I mean, Hot 6, do you think they'll just end up trying a similar strategy again and just trying to gain confidence through that and say, hey, well, this is what we do. If we can win with this, like, we'll gain confidence. that was one of the most meaningful sides that I've heard.
Okay, let me put that. I would not recommend trying this again.
Right.
At least, if you want to do some... I would consider this an all-out early game strat, which we very rarely see. If we see all-out early game strats, they're usually revolving around pushing towers super early. Like, you have multiple heroes with summons, and you have, like, a Pugna, which they have, but that was the only pusher they had, so you can destroy the game early. Like, in terms of ease of execution, this is perhaps the hardest way to play Dota. Like, you have to gank really well early on. They can't fail. The enemy team can't get much farm. And on top of that, you also have a clock. Because if they get BKBs, even if you're ahead, they can actually beat your team at a 10k deficit in their own base. So, personally for me, this is the weakest draft Hot 6 has had all tournament. And I am worried for them that they are just tilting right now. And that they don't know what to do. Which is really unfortunate, because they have so many good elements from the last days. To me, this was not the adaptation they were looking for. Quite the contrary, actually. They took this in the wrong direction, and maybe they just... I don't know. It could be a one-off game for them where they started drafting the idea they had, they started doubting themselves and just went with something completely different, but to me, this is definitely not the way to go.
All right. I mean, Shiva, any thoughts for you?
I think, for Virtus Pro, they just got free reign. They could do whatever they wanted to. And maybe Hot 6, maybe I was wrong, maybe they should try to put Virtus Pro a bit out of their comfort zone, even though that's very difficult to do. But if they can't play their own game to their own strengths, and if they can't, get their own lineup to work, which I think this was kind of it that they were expecting to work, then well, they have to try something else. I mean, we're at TI, they can't just let themselves get rolled over like that again. That's not an option.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of MVP, of course, Hot 6 not so successful this game, but the other MVP team, MVP Phoenix. We have a quick update on that. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. They did win their first game against IG, and with some spectacular fashion too. So we'll take a look at that.
The manliest of items.
The triple rapier game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Game.
Spoilers.
Oh, man.
So, as Empire, you go late game against an Ember and a Gyrocopter.
It's just, I'm really nervous really worried rather for IG at this point. Okay. That is the appropriate reaction to that slide of face. But you got to be worried for IG. We were skeptical in the start. They had some good plays, some bad plays on day one. Yesterday, they also didn't really show up. They've got the draw against LGD, which is clearly their best result on paper, and they're now down 1-0 against MVP, who most people believe to be maybe the weakest team of the group. And I'm nervous for IG as to whether they can get their play together again. They most likely have to accept being in the lower bracket at this point. Going into the main event, they need to win a best of one to start. We could see IG in the bottom 4 technically if they don't get out of this slump, which would be like it's almost impossible to imagine going into the tournament that maybe IG don't play super high, but bottom 4.
Yeah, I mean, Winter, what do you take away from this? I mean, IG, what's going on here? I mean, simply put.
Yeah, even on the first day, we were talking about when we were discussing about IG, we weren't really sure what would happen to IG. Like, will they do well or will they like just crumble? Because they have been showing a lot of mixed results and hasn't particularly performed well in the recent patch as well. So they have a few days to change up, like to take a look at the replays and the closer angle and try to figure out whether it's mostly the draft or execution or what heroes they should prioritize more based on the stats of their team. There's a lot of work they have to put in to make sure that they're not going to get a second chance at the main event. They're going down to the losers bracket, so very little room. Okay, there's no room for error anymore. Not little room for error.
Do you feel like they're a team that tilts?
Based on experience, yes, because when I said this before to friends and to when I'm casting at like BTS, I always tell LD and Gods that if you're on a team with Tron, you lose the game, and you get this reaction from him. He's unhappy, and you don't want that to happen again because it's not good. So I always say that if you play with Tron in a team, you don't want to lose 2 best of 3s back to back. But then again, if you are down to the losers bracket, you only have 1 chance. So.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it is.
There's
looking
only
pretty
this
rough.
much the rage of Tron can do when you are at the losers bracket.
All right, fair enough, but I think you put it in the right way. At this point, it's not even like little room left. Like,
No room.
if you go down to that point, you're pushed to the very edge. Either you make a miracle happen, or that's where your TI run ends. That would be pretty unfortunate. Let's return, though. Of course, we aren't done with our match. After taking a look there between IG and MVP Phoenix, maybe Hot Six can take some energy for MVP Phoenix doing well, gain their confidence, but it does look like either they're stubborn or just they're not able to adapt very well against these other teams who seem to say, all right, hey, you wanna do that? Like, we saw you do that the other game. We've seen you do that before. We're just going to play it a little bit safer and then aggress right after you make that first mistake because you chose to play a harder game. Virtus Pro feeling really good. I mean, that's, I think, the first time we've seen players like react to the camera. They're like, oh, hey, like, we just won the game. We're feeling really good. So VP seems pretty happy about that one.
It's time for MVP Hot 6 to react that we can't just pick spellcasters for MP, or he, as a player, has to tell his team, guys, this is actually not working. We have to do something else. I can't just be playing spellcasting mid-heroes.
All right, well, into the draft of Game 2. Again, it's time to find out, can Hot 6 switch things up, or will it just be down the same path once again?
We do have one more update, by the way, which is Newbie managed to take down Empire in the first game.
All right.
And that was actually really one-sided. Newbie destroyed them. So Empire, that might be if you look at the situation right now, that might be the worst prediction I've made so far. I've had a couple of questionable ones, but I had really high hopes for Empire going in. They are not looking good right now. And
yeah,
the question is if, once again, can they pull themselves together for the main event? They had a 2-0 yesterday against VP, which was great. Then they got 0-2 and now down 0-1 against Newbie, who, if history repeats itself, will probably end in a draw with them. But they really need to get this 1 point, actually. It could make a big difference for them in Group B, where it seems like we're more in a group where every point matters than in Group A.
Yeah, for Empire, this next game coming up will be pretty important. So if you want to go check out that matchup, it is on Stream 3 for us here on the mainstream. Taking things a little bit slower here in the draft. Hot 6 does seem to be utilizing as much time as they can this time, rather than saying, hey, this is our game plan. Everyone can see it, but we're still going to run with it.
Yeah, first pick this time for Virtus Pro, so I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with that. I mean, last game we saw Bloodseeker first pick, so that was kind of out of the box, even though we have seen Bloodseeker, of course, a lot of the times before. For MVP Hot 6, I'm really hoping that they can give Forev something that he can actually fight with, because he's kind of getting forced to fight, and he will be forced to fight against Virtus Pro very early on as well. But that he can also go on late, which is actually, I thought maybe a gyrocopter would be nice for him this game, but they actually banned it out themselves.
Yeah, and
So it's a bit of a shame.
I mean, of course, the fear in the first pick gyro. I mean, we've been seeing that so commonly,
Yeah.
but then this is what we've seen otherwise. If the gyro gets banned, the Naga gets picked up, and so many teams have been very flexible with how they use the Naga Siren at TI.
Yeah, we saw actually earlier. I think it was Seneko for Navi
Yeah.
played support Naga Siren, got his rapier or his
Support
radiance.
Naga Siren.
Support between
Yeah,
quotation
that's
marks.
questionable term at that point. But yeah, definitely turned it around. Right, started as support, but didn't
yes.
really end up.
That's
in
the
that
strength
role
of the
by
hero,
end.
though.
Yeah, fair enough.
Utility is the name of the game now.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's such a flexible pick when you like. The reason Naga is so good is that it can play mid as a core. You can play it safe lane as a farming core as well. Support. It can even off lane. It's also good in dual off lanes because it has high base armor and good move speed. Like there's so many things about this hero. In addition to just the feeling of safety you get in the game. Like a lot of the teams will probably be a little bit nervous and won't maybe be feeling 100% confident in what plays they can make. And it's like it's a get out of jail free card, basically the ultimate. Or it's a get into jail on the best possible conditions card. I don't know.
I mean,
so
it's
a
more
great,
like
it's
he's
great
the
team
jail
fighter.
warden, not
Yeah,
the
jail warden. I like that. So you can set up for team fights very well. If you're not the best team at like really crisp execution, you have the time to get in position. Or if you are a team with incredible execution, you will just be that extra bit crisp at seeing the perfect timing with Naga Siren, as we've seen from teams like EG and Secret. So
Now, Bounty Hunter and Quap. Now, Quap, earlier in Game 1, we saw it go all the way to the very last phase and then getting banned finally at the very end. The Bounty Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, was it Hot 6 with the very unsuccessful Bounty Hunter yesterday?
Tinker Bounty Hunter.
Jared, yeah.
he was decently good. The least successful bounty hunter yesterday was Vici Gaming.
Oh, no,
they
that
went
was Vici
0-6-0
Gaming,
against EG. He had no impact at all in that game. But to be fair, no one did on Vici
Right.
Gaming.
No,
They
yeah,
just
that,
got
yeah, it was just like a special
absolutely
stat
run
at that
over.
point.
I think Jerax in general plays really, really well on roaming heroes. And I'm